My name is Hazel Weston. I'm 67 years old. Last April, my daughter listed my house for sale without telling me. There was no conversation, no warning, no mention of it over Sunday dinner. A for sale sign appeared in my front yard on a Tuesday morning, and I found out about it from my neighbor Doris, who called me from her own driveway at 8:45 and said, in the way Doris says most things, "Hazel, what on earth is going on over there?" I looked out the kitchen window. Blue and white sign, staked just left of the mailbox. I'd slept 8 feet away from that sign and hadn't heard a thing. Welcome to Strong Mom Stories, where the women everybody counted out get the last quiet word. I'm glad you're here. Drop a comment and subscribe before we go any further, because what happens at the end of this story is the whole reason I'm telling it. The house is at 211 Whitfield Lane in Roanoke County, Virginia. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a screened porch, and a detached workshop behind the garage. Earl and I bought it in March of 1994 for $112,000. We were 35 and 38. We ate a lot of pasta that first winter, and we did not care even a little. Earl died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 9 months from diagnosis to the end. He was 69. He had been planning to finish the workshop that fall. He had 3 projects on sawhorses when he went to the hospital for the last time, and they are still on those sawhorses, because that is where they live. In the kitchen, there is a table he built in 2001 from reclaimed barn wood. He hauled in his truck from a demolished property in Franklin County. It is heavy and slightly uneven, and one of the legs has a scratch on it from when my daughter Amber was 7 and dragged a metal chair across the floor. I have thought about refinishing that table for 20 years. I have not refinished it. I have no plans to refinish it. I need you to understand what that table is before I tell you what happened to it. My daughter Amber is 44. She has my father's stubbornness and Earl's laugh and a husband named Craig, who has been running numbers on various schemes since 2017. Craig is 46. He owns a landscaping company in Salem that has been, depending on the quarter you ask about, either turning a corner or just about to. He is not a bad man. He is an efficient one. There is a difference, and it matters, and I learned that distinction from watching Earl, who was neither. On a Sunday in March, they came over for lunch. Craig had a folder. Amber had the look she gets when she already knows how something is going to go and doesn't want to be the one to start it. Craig set the folder on Earl's kitchen table like he owned it. Sunrise Gardens, it said on the cover. Assisted living and memory care. A woman on the front, silver-haired, laughing at a salad. Studios from $3,900 a month. Independent living from 28. Craig did most of the talking. He said the house was a lot to maintain for one person. He said the stairs were getting to be a liability. There are 4 stairs. 4. He said the workshop was just sitting there taking up space. He said a man named Todd Burrell had done a market analysis, and the numbers were good right now, and if we waited, we'd be leaving equity on the table. He said that word twice. I poured more coffee. I asked him one question. I said, "Craig, who else have you talked to about this?" He mentioned Todd, senior relocation specialist. He'd been very helpful. He used that phrase, helpful, the way people use it when they mean useful to me specifically. I said, "Okay." I left the folder on the table. I watched them drive away. Then I stood at the kitchen window for a while, looking at Earl's workshop, and I thought, he has no idea what I did in 2020. Let me tell you what I did for 24 years, because it matters, and because almost nobody in my life knew it. My father had a heart attack when I was 19. He recovered, but there was no college fund after that, and so I went to work. File clerk at a title company in downtown Roanoke. I put documents in the right drawers, and then I started reading them. In 1984, I moved to Aldridge and Carmichael, a law firm on Jefferson Street that handled estate planning and real estate. I worked there as a paralegal for 24 years. I retired in 2018. What I did there was read the documents no one else read. Purchase contracts, trust agreements, deed restrictions, recorded instruments. I read the ones that came in at 3 in the afternoon when the attorneys were already on the phone with someone else. I read the exceptions on the preliminary title reports that buyers skimmed and agents forwarded, and everybody assumed somebody else had handled. At a dinner party in 2019, someone asked Amber what her mother used to do, and I heard her say, "Oh, she worked at a law firm. Admin stuff, I think." She was standing 6 feet away from me. I am not telling you this so you'll think I'm impressive. I'm telling you because of what it meant that she never asked. Here is what happened in the summer of 2020. I had a hip replacement scheduled for September. I signed a durable power of attorney, naming Craig as my agent for financial matters, because Amber was going back to work in October, and Craig works for himself, and I needed someone who could pay my bills and manage my accounts if the recovery ran long. That was accurate and reasonable. In August, while I was still recovering, I got a letter from a commercial lender in Blacksburg addressed to me, thanking me for my recent application for a small business equipment loan in the amount of $62,000. I had not applied for anything. Craig had used my power of attorney. He had signed my name with his own hand. The loan was declined because the lender's attorney read the POA and flagged it. The scope covered personal financial matters, not third-party business obligations. Craig told me about it later, annoyed, and said the lender was difficult and the attorney had been nitpicking. He never once asked what the flagged issue was. I called my old colleague Jean at the firm. Jean is 61 now, solo practice, elder law. She is not sentimental, and she does not mince words, and she charges by the 6-minute increment. I told her everything. She said 4 things: revoke the POA, record the revocation, mail Craig a certified copy, and get the house into a trust. By the end of October 2020, I had done all 4. The revocation of power of attorney is document number 2020R-08841, recorded with the Roanoke County Circuit Court Clerk's Office on October 14, 2020. The Hazel M. Weston Revocable Living Trust is dated October 3, 2020. The deed transferring 2111 Whitfield Lane into that trust is document 2020D-09217, recorded October 19, 2020. I named myself trustee. I named Zoe, my granddaughter, Amber's daughter, 22 years old and in her last year of a nursing program at Radford University, as successor trustee. I mailed Craig the certified copy of the revocation return receipt requested. The green card came back 10 days later. The signature in the delivery box is not Craig's handwriting. It's a looping cursive A with a small circle over it that I recognized immediately. Amber signed for it. I put the green card in my filing cabinet under W. Craig never called. Craig never asked. He folded a copy of the original 2020 POA, the one I'd already revoked, into a folder and apparently carried it around for 5 years like a deed to something he owned. After the sign went up in April, I called Jean. I told her what was happening. She said the same thing she'd said in 2020. Don't fight this in your living room. Let it go to the title company. Pick the room where what you say doesn't matter and what's written down does. I said I knew exactly the room. She said she thought I might. The lockbox went on my front door the following week. Todd Burrell hung it himself, a black one, combination lock. He told me it would make showings more convenient, that I wouldn't need to be present. He said it in the tone people use when they're doing you a favor. I stood in my own doorway while he tested the clasp. He called me Mrs. Weston. He told me about his grandmother. He'd sold her house in Christiansburg in 38 days. It was the kindest thing for everyone, he said. He said it twice. I believed that he believed it. That's the part that made me tired. There were 14 showings in 6 weeks. I know because I sat on Doris's front porch across the street and counted. Doris is 68. We have shared a fence and sweet corn and various neighborhood opinions for 19 years. When the sign went up, she brought me a casserole, green bean, foil on top, and held my arms at the door and looked at my face like she was checking for damage. You just say the word, she said. If it's too much. She didn't finish the sentence. I knew what the end of it was. The rest of Whitfield Lane made up its own story about me inside of 2 weeks. The woman at the corner stopped me at my mailbox and asked if I was excited about the next chapter. A man down the street told me his uncle loved Sunrise Gardens. Nobody asked me one direct question. They asked each other, and then they came to me with the answer already in the question. By the end of April, on my own street in my house I'd owned for 30 years, I had become a situation that was being handled. Amber came on a Saturday to help with staging. She had flat-pack boxes and a label maker, and the particular energy of someone who has been rehearsing this in their head for months. She was efficient and cheerful, and she kept saying things like, "Buyers just need to be able to picture themselves here," which is a sentence that means, your life has to stop looking like yours. She packed the den shelves. I told her the bedroom stayed as it was. She said, of course, in the voice people use when they've heard something and filed it under later. Around noon, I came into the kitchen and found her standing at Earl's table with both hands flat on the surface, measuring it with her eyes. She said it was a little rough for buyers. She said the grain was uneven. She said there was a salvage place in town that would take it. I walked to the table. I put my hand on the scratch in the leg, the one she made when she was 7, and I looked at her. She took her hands off the wood and did not say anything for a long time. She put a label on a box by the door that said Original Furnishings, ? I understood that I was going to be on a label too, eventually, with a question mark after me. The offer came in at the end of May. A couple named the Reinhardts, early 40s, relocating from Northern Virginia. Their agent emailed Amber and Craig a copy of the preliminary title report the same day. Routine. It went to Todd as well. 6 people received that document electronically before it arrived at my mailbox 3 days later. I sat down on the arm of my couch and read the exceptions. Exception 7 was a deed of trust recorded October 19, 2020. Document 2020D-09217. Grantor, Hazel M. Weston, trustee of the Hazel M. Weston Revocable Living Trust, dated October 3, 2020. I had read that document myself when it came back from the clerk's office. I was the one who signed it. I knew what it said. I still read Exception 7 3 times, out loud, quietly, in my living room, because after 24 years of reading documents nobody else read, I wanted to hear this one in a room. Not one of those 6 people had opened the attachment. Closing was set for Thursday, June 12th, at a title company on Williamson Road in Roanoke. I pressed my good blouse the night before. I set out my shoes. I put my driver's license in the outside pocket of my purse so I wouldn't be fumbling at the table. Zoe had called me every week since the sign went up. She's 22, pre-nursing, works shifts at a medical clinic in Christiansburg. She found out about the listing from Amber's Instagram. Listing photos, 3 heart emojis, caption that said exciting new chapter for mom. Zoe sat on my porch steps in scrubs and cried and said she would come to the closing and say something. I told her no. I told her, if you make a scene, this becomes a story about a family fighting, and everyone in that room will choose the version that's easiest to believe about a 67-year-old widow. She looked at me for a long moment. She said, okay. She said she'd bring coffee every week until it was over. She did. I arrived at the title company at 9:48 for a 10 o'clock closing. The conference room had a round table, a box of tissues in the center, a window facing the parking lot. The Reinhardts came in first. They were warm and nervous the way people are at closings, the good kind of nervous, first house, dog in the car outside. Their agent sat beside them. Todd came in with 2 pens and told me I looked lovely. Amber sat across the room with a travel mug and did not meet my eyes. Craig came in on the phone and ended the call and put his hand on the back of my chair. Not on me, on the chair, and said, "You doing all right, Mom?" The closing agent, Beth Carver, started with photo IDs. Then the door opened. A woman came in I had never seen before, early 30s, cardigan, a printed report in her hand with a blue flag on page 3. She apologized for the interruption. She said her name was Priya Nair, title officer, and she needed 5 minutes before anyone signed anything. She pulled out a chair without sitting in it. "We ran a date down this morning," she said. "I want to walk through the chain of title." She read it the way you read a utility bill. No inflection, no pause for drama. The 1994 purchase deed. 2 refinances. Then she turned to the blue flag. October 19, 2020. Document 2020D-09217. Hazel M. Weston, trustee of the Hazel M. Weston Revocable Living Trust, dated October 3, 2020, grants the subject property into trust. Craig looked up. I'm sorry, what? Priya looked at him. Her voice was kind and completely level. The property is held in the name of Mrs. Weston's living trust. A power of attorney conveys authority to act on behalf of an individual. It does not convey authority to act as trustee of a separate legal entity. Only Miss Weston, as trustee, can execute a conveyance of this property. I have a power of attorney. He reached into his folder and put it on the table. It's been in effect since 2020. Priya looked at it. She looked at her screen. There's a second item. The power of attorney you've submitted. Document 2020P03314 has a recorded revocation against it. Document 2020R08841, recorded October 14, 2020 at 9:22 a.m. It's been in the public record for 5 years. She paused one beat. That means the seller's representative had no authority to list this property. The listing agreement dated April 9th is unenforceable. Todd said, that's not possible. Priya said, it's been public for 5 years. Craig stood up. He did not knock his chair over. He went very still instead, which was somehow worse. He said, Amber, what did your mother do? Amber looked at me for the first time all morning. I opened my purse. I took out 2 things. The first was the trust document. My copy, notarized, with the raised clerk's seal on the first page. I set it in the center of the table. The second was a small green card, the kind that comes back in the mail after a certified letter is delivered. I slid it toward Amber. The handwriting in the signature box was hers. She looked at it. She looked at me. She said, I didn't. I get so much mail, I didn't know what it. She stopped. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. Craig said, the family makes these decisions. We were doing this for her. Priya Nair was still working. She didn't look up. Title doesn't ask the family, she said. Title asks the record. I stayed in my chair until the room went quiet. Then I said 6 words. I'm the trustee. I'm not signing. The closing agent called the lender from the corner of the room in a low voice. She came back and said the loan had been withdrawn. The Hearts agent asked carefully whether the title exception could be cured. Priya said only by the trustee. Voluntarily. Everyone looked at me. I stood up. I picked up the trust document and the green card and put them back in my purse. I looked at Craig, who was still holding the pen he had brought from home. You get nothing from this house, I said. You never had anything to get. Then I said good morning to the Reinhardts and told them I was sorry, and I meant it with everything I had. And I walked out of that conference room and down the stairs and across the parking lot and sat in my car for about 3 minutes before I could make my hands stop shaking. Escrow was terminated that afternoon. I mailed the Reinhardts a cashier's check for $1,430, their appraisal, their inspection, their rate lock extension, with a note that said, none of this was your fault, and I hope your next house has a better story. The woman wrote back. She sent a picture of a yellow lab in a yard. I filed a complaint with the Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation against Todd Burrell for listing an occupied property under a power of attorney without verifying the instrument's current status or the property's title record. Todd's senior transitions page came down within 3 weeks. I reported the matter to Adult Protective Services. A caseworker came out and sat at Earl's kitchen table for 45 minutes and read everything in my folder. She said most of the time we get a phone call and a feeling. She did not say what she meant by that, but I knew. There is a file now. It is not empty. I changed my locks. I updated the trust to add Jean as backup successor trustee alongside Zoe. Zoe moved into the guest room in July. $50 a month, and she handles the recycling and weeds the garden on Sunday mornings. She leaves for her clinicals at 5:30. and I hear her coffee cup on the counter through the wall, and I get up and make my own and stand at the kitchen window in the early light and look at Earl's workshop and think about how much I still have to do. Amber and I have spoken 4 times since June. Her birthday, Zoe's graduation, once when her car broke down, and once when she called and didn't say anything for about 20 seconds and then said she didn't know about the certified letter. I said I know. She said she was sorry. I said I know that too. I have not spoken to Craig. People keep saying I outmaneuvered my son-in-law. I want to be careful about that word, because someone listening to this right now is doing the math on their own situation, and I don't want them to think this required cleverness. It required one afternoon in October of 2020. It required a $750 attorney fee, a trust document, and a deed recorded at the county clerk's office. It required mailing a certified letter and keeping the green card that came back. That is the entire apparatus. Craig had 5 years to walk into the Roanoke County Circuit Court clerk's office. Anyone can. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need a license. You just walk in off the street and search a name, and it costs you nothing to look. He had 5 years to read the record. He chose to carry a revoked piece of paper in a folder instead. You cannot take something from someone who documented everything. You cannot sell a house you never controlled. Here is the only thing I know that is worth saying. They can decide what you are in every room, but the one where somebody reads the record out loud. So go find out what your deed actually says while you still have the choosing of it. Pull a certified copy from your county clerk's office. It costs less than dinner. It takes one morning. That is my whole lesson. That is everything I know. If this made you think about your own situation, hit subscribe and drop a comment. I read everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.